Hey guys, welcome back, and I'm going to be talking about my first little book that I finished for my TBR. We have Saga. This is the volume 1 of Saga. I should have finished this a long time ago. Because I knew this would literally take me like an hour or two to read, and it did. Once I actually, literally I just finished this last night. And so I made sure I went to bed early so I could finish it, because every time I was like, oh, I'm gonna make some time, give myself like an hour or two so I can go ahead and finish this book. And I never did, until last night. And so we are officially finished, and my thoughts. I thought it was pretty decent. So it's definitely, your kind of sci-fi kind of vibes. And that's not like my favorite genre, I'm gonna be completely honest. It's very sci-fi, fantasy kind of vibes. Basically, the story follows the main characters on the cover of this book. You have Elena and Marco, and then that baby right there is Hazel. I'm trying not to show the cover too much because it does have a little boobage because she is breastfeeding. And that is one thing that, if you're not me, maybe you would notice at the back of the book that it does actually give the book a rating. It gives it a rated M for mature. I did not know that. I'm pretty sure I just was looking to kind of explore graphic novels and comic kind of books. And so I just looked in that section in the bookstore and looked at the covers of books and decided on what book to grab. And I grabbed this one because it looked kind of interesting. So I did not pay attention to the fact that it's rated mature. So this is not for children. If you are under the age of 18, you should not be reading this book. This one in particular, it goes through, I don't even remember how many chapters. I think it's around 10 or I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers at this point. 6 chapters. I literally said 10. Don't listen to me. This one covers the first 6 issues, I guess you could say, of the comics. And within these 6 issues, the main big, escandalo bits, there was probably 4 to 5 pages that, have a lot more graphic scenes. The first one you get introduced to, it's very early on in the book where you're still kind of just getting introduced to the characters and the plot line. And it's so you have the main characters, I think I said their names, Elena, Marco, Hazel is the baby. You have their main story, and they're the main plot of the whole story, but then you have 2 other kind of stories, at least thus far, as far as the volume 1. The first other story you kind of get introduced to, the scene, in my personal opinion, wasn't necessarily needed, but you get introduced to the character Prince Robot the Fourth, I believe. And, basically that scene is pretty much just, and that's literally as you were getting introduced to this character, but it's pretty much just him with his wife, and, they want to have a family, and he's having some performance issues because he's super stressed because they're at war and everything. Yeah, so there's that. And then also the other kind of mature scene is, again, with the other kind of storyline, and that main character's name is The Will. And he specifically is going to a specific location because he wants to pay for you-know-what. And so once he gets there, you know what is happening all around him. So there's that. That one is I would say the most graphic. And it expanded, I believe, 3 full pages. Literally, I think there was 1 line of dialogue. I honestly don't remember what the heck it was because I kind of was just skipping over that. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I really did not know what I was getting into until I finished the whole book and I looked at the back and I saw that it was rated at mature. But besides that, I actually really liked the story of at least the main characters. I thought their story was kind of interesting, and the narrator of the actual story is the baby, but obviously as she's much older. And so there's times where she kind of hints at things of okay, that makes it oh, that's kind of interesting. I would like to know more. But she literally at one point said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get back to the main story and plot line. So it definitely kind of helps you kind of okay, I'm intrigued, I want more. But basically, I feel like I really didn't talk about the plot. But the plot basically is you have Elena and Marco. Marco was a prisoner and his species, I guess we can say, they use magic. So Marco has, like, he can do spells and whatnot, magic, all that jazz. And Elena, she was actually a guard and he was a prisoner. Star-crossed lovers, you know. And then they starts this whole story out. She's popping out a baby. And so they have to run away from everyone, pretty much, because everyone is chasing after them to get rid of them, because, you know, it's very important to just get rid of these two people who were seemingly fairly irrelevant, but clearly they're important enough to get rid of because they're together. Like I said, it's very much like your sci-fi kind of fantasy kind of vibes, which I'm completely honest. Sci-fi and fantasy both. Not my favorite genres. They're not by far like my least favorite genres, but they're not my favorite. And so I find it sometimes hard for me to get into books like that. And so for me, this was a lot. I don't necessarily think that I would continue, and also just because of the fact that already in the first one there were a lot of scenes, and I did a little bit of research after reading it, and it seems like, at least according to some people, the graphic scenes get a little bit worse. And I'm just someone who I try to avoid super spicy kind of scenes in just books in general like that, or like if a book does have those kind of scenes, I just tend to skip over them. But, you know, it's just easier to just enjoy books and read books that don't have it at all, so I don't have to worry about missing out on, like, potential plot points or anything, because sometimes people have full-on conversations and those kinds of scenes, you know? So it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes to, you know, read a book like that. But overall, I would give it like a solid 3, because it wasn't terrible or anything. I just know that for me personally, it's just not, you know, my go-to kind of vibes. But it did have like an interesting plot line. But I think, again, like I said, I mainly liked the main character's plot line. So the other two characters' plot lines, I understand their necessity because they're basically the adversaries of the main characters. So they help kind of give you some information, because you're not getting all of the information from the main characters, because literally a lot of the background information is coming from them investigating the main characters and everything like that. So I understand their necessity, but their storylines, to me, not that interesting. Well, honestly, at the very end, when the Will was on his own little hunt, it takes a turn and it makes it like, oh, that's kind of interesting. What are you going to do with that situation, sir? That makes it a little interesting. Or, I'm sorry, not sir, because he goes by the, you know, he's a the, apparently. Because it literally was a thing in the book where they said Mr. and he was like, no, it's the. So give him the correct pronoun. That's not really a pronoun, but like description, I guess. But anyways, yeah, so I've given it definitely a solid 3. I don't know, I just totally yapped like about nonsense for far too long. And so if you are someone who is like really into like that sci-fi kind of fantasy kind of vibes, would highly recommend. And also if you're older than you're 18 up, you have to be 18 and up. But it was pretty interesting for what it was. And again, it should never have taken me as long as it has to read this, because we got it done in like an hour or 2. And so now we will do a little quick drum roll here to see what the next book on the list is going to be. And I will have the wheel spinning here, and it is The Siren. I really love Kiera Cass for the selection. All of the other books, well, I shouldn't say all of, most of the other books by Kiera Cass that I have read didn't hit. The selection, the original trilogy of the selection, I should say, because she does decide to, or she did decide to add to the selection with 2 more books. Me personally, I would say skip them. I would also say the novellas, I don't think really are all that important either. Just stick with the original trilogy and you'll have a good time. But I also read her books. I actually have them right here. I've read her books, Betrayed and Betrothed. Don't bother reading these. The main character is extremely annoying, to be completely honest. And then her other book, outside of the selection of the Betrothed that I've read, is this one here, 1,000 Heartbeats. This one wasn't that bad, and it was a one-off read. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't like the most like memorable book either. I genuinely have very little recollection of what even happened in this book, but I knew that I did not dislike it as much as I disliked the last 2 books of the selection and The Betrothed and The Betrayed. So it's kind of like, I don't necessarily have high hopes with The Siren, just because of kind of all the other books that I read outside of, you know, the main storyline of the selection. And also I just feel like I don't care that much about like sirens and mermaid kind of stuff. So I don't know, but I think this also should be a quick read. I think it's literally possibly barely 300 pages. Yeah, it's barely 300 pages. The text is pretty big, so it really shouldn't take me that long, but obviously, as you can see, it literally took me over a week to read this. And once I started reading it, was able to read it in like an hour and a half. We'll see how this goes. I might try and start reading it tonight, and see how far we can get into it. Because again, it shouldn't take me too long. My goal, I'll make it a goal for me to finish this by the end of the week. Will we get there? I don't know. But I want to try to start reading like actual physical books every day. And I also did go ahead and borrow the audiobook from Libby. So I want to at least start reading the physical book before I start getting into the audiobook. So I think I might try and read like a couple of chapters tonight to get into it, and then, you know, maybe at work or something I can go ahead and listen to the audiobook. But one thing I will be able to say, once I finish this, I will have officially, I think, read all of Kira Cass's books. I think. Possibly. I don't know. But anyways, thank you guys for joining me, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with reading this. And I will catch you guys next time.